G'day everyone, welcome to the third part of the guide for germanium transistors. This was meant to be the last video. It may actually be the second last. I'm predicting this might take a while to go through the transistors that I have on hand and tell you about my impression with them. But I'll try and fit this into one video so it doesn't go over two. We'll have to see how we go for time. So it probably looks like I've actually got more transistors than I actually have. I estimate there might be maybe 600 or so that I've bought over the last sort of 12 months. And as I said in the last video, this is kind of like I'm not selling these anymore. This is my personal stash, I guess you'd say. And apart from buying the odd set here and there that I might see on eBay, I'm not really actively buying anymore. I think I've got enough to work with here. They've all got their own sort of different sounds and their own HFEs, so it's good to have a broad range that you can select from. Also, before you buy any germanium transistors, make sure that you Google for, you know, like if you're looking at a GT309B, do a Google for GT309B HFE, because you often find that people have already measured all the HFEs and reported whether they're any good or not. It sort of lessens the risk because there are a lot of sort of dodgy ones out there. So I'm going to start with the actual first lot of germanium transistors that I bought, and I've actually since bought two more lots of these because I actually found them to be pretty good. So this is just my opinion of what they actually sound like. It sounds very subjective. I'm just going to say whether I think that they sound good, they don't sound good, they you know, maybe a few sort of musical buzzwords like tight, loose, etc, etc. So these are the first ones. This is the first lot that I bought. These are the GT108Vs, and they are very small, which is an advantage, because if you haven't done anything with germanium transistors yet, you will find that fitting three big transistors, and when I say big, they get pretty damn big. These are the top hats, and you know, like they're the size of a bullet, you know, and you've got to sort of squeeze them into a guitar pedal. So if they sound good and they're small, that is that's an advantage in my books. I'd classify these as being a bit sort of tight sounding. They're more modern. They are early 90s or I think they were early 90s, so they're probably actually some of the last transistors that were actually made. But I really like them, and the sound comparison I did in the last video was actually using these. It almost sounds like a fuzz hybrid distortion. They got their own unique character, which I haven't really found with any other transistors so far. The gain ranges that you'll get with these are, and I'll just go off memory here, I'm pretty sure you're not going to get them under, well, you might get some around 50, but most of them will probably be between 60 to 100, with another fair amount between 100 and 130. You don't get quite as many between 100 and 130, but you know, you might get sort of, don't hold me to it, but 20% between 100 and 130. So you should get a number of sets out of the GT108Vs, and you don't get many that are actually in the useless range below 50. You know, like I don't think I got any that were actually below 50. They were all between 50 and, you know, like there's a few that went into 140, 150, but the majority of them were between 60 and 130, which is perfect. Hence why I bought two more boxes. So the next transistor is a Russian, this is another Russian transistor. The last one was a Russian transistor, the GT108V, and this is another Russian transistor, and I've just forgotten the part number. The part number is GT402B, and actually no, sorry, GT402V. Often with these Russian ones, you're going to get confused with what V and B is, but V usually means higher gain than B. I think it goes A, B, V or something like that. But then you've got Russian sort of write B as a V as well, so it gets pretty damn confusing. But when you're looking at them, you want the English V. That's what you want. You don't want the Russian B, because that usually means that they're in the lower gain ranges, and that goes with a lot of them. A lot of the GT Russian transistors have B and V on the end. So yeah, there's another tip for you to look out for. So you can see, hopefully this can focus. So you might be able to see there how it's actually written in Russian. You can see it's not actually a B. It's a symbol that kind of looks like a B, but when they type it in English, sometimes they type it as a B because that's the closest looking symbol. It can get really confusing. But this transistor is a GT402V. You want the Vs, they're usually the best. Some people say that they're military spec. I'm not sure if that's actually true. When it says V, it means military spec. I don't think that's actually true. I think if it's military spec, they will, it's just the model, you know, they'll say that it's a military spec transistor. So, how do they sound? I wish I had bought more of these. They sound excellent. I've actually I sold a whole bunch of these when I first got them, and I'm kind of regretting it because they're just so good. I sold a lot of the ones between 100 and 130 HFE, and you know, I kept a few for myself, but there's not a hell of a lot left in the bag there. But the HFEs that you'll get with these, majority of them actually won't be under 100. You get maybe, I think I got out of 100, I probably got about maybe 10 or 20 that were below 100, from 50 to 100, and then the rest ranged between 100 to up to, I think the most I got was about 250. You get a few that are over 200. I think maybe, you know, again, don't hold me to it, but approximately like 5 that were over 200, and the rest were between 100 and 200. And when I first started playing around with these transistors, I got sucked into this mentality that if it's not within 100 and 130, it's no good, but it's not the case. Anything between 100 and 200, I reckon, is very usable. So these were a score, but they not just the fact that of the HFEs, they sound excellent. They're kind of loose, and they sound more vintage than a lot of the other ones that I've got. And they have a full, broad sort of spectrum, you know, frequency response. They don't sound sort of pinched like some of the other ones do. They don't sound raspy. They're just great. But yeah, I haven't seen any more on eBay, but keep an eye out for them. GT402V. No, actually, I did see some on eBay recently, but they were a little bit pricey, so I kind of skipped them. I don't know if they're still there. You'll have to check. So they're a good one for Q3 in a you know, in a Fuzz Q2 or Q3, you know, the high gain transistor, and in fact, in combination with the modern ones, which have a tighter sound, they kind of help it to breathe a bit if you whack one of those in the in Q3. That's why it's good to have a combination, you know, a range of transistors to select from. Because I mean, if you use 3 of the GT108Vs, it's gonna, like, each time you use one, it kind of makes it sound tighter. Whereas if you whack in something that sounds a bit looser, it sort of opens it up a bit. So yeah, having a combination of transistors, I reckon, actually sounds better than just using the same one. Okay, now these ones aren't going to be in order. I'm just going to grab randomly what I've got. This is a new one that I've actually bought recently. This actually has the prefix, this is another Russian. This one actually has the prefix of G, and I think G might actually be similar to V as well, not letter-wise, gain-wise. I think that's another high gain suffix. Yeah, because it's at the end of the part number, and these pretty much measured exactly the same as the 108Vs, and in fact, I think they're probably pretty much the same as the 108Vs. So I didn't realize at the time. I was looking at the photo and I thought they were actually bigger, but when I got them, I thought, oh gee, these look exactly the same as the 108Vs. So that's a score in my books, because I like the 108Vs, like I said in the first one. they're probably not everyone's cup of tea because they have a bit of a tight sound, but because I like distortion and I like fuzz, you know, like in the buzz around, it makes it sound like like I said before, a hybrid fuzz distortion. So that's another one. GT309G is like the GT108V. So I might as well just cover all the Russians because I've already done 3 of them. So I'll just pick out all the Russians. The next Russian is a GT308B, or as the Russians write it, IT308B. In the first video I mentioned that if the collector current, because the guitar pedal collector current's usually pretty low, if it's some of the specifications say that you'll get a higher gain, you measure them and they're not as high, and that's because there's not enough collector current going to the transistor to get it into the stated HFEs. This was actually the beast that was vexing me. I could not work out why they were not measuring at the right HFE. As I mentioned in the first video, go watch that one if you're not sure what I'm talking about here. So the HFEs are really low. Like if I just pick out a bunch in here, this one I've got in my hand is 69 HFE. You've got 51, 62, 66. I'm sure you can trust what I'm saying is correct. 56. You've got 60. You've got 64. You've got 44. 59. You get the idea. I think the most that I had a bunch that were around 70 to 80. You know, like out of 100 I had maybe 30. But I figured that it doesn't really matter so much. I mean, you can still use those gains for Q1 and Q2 as long as they actually sound good. So I plugged them in and had a listen, and lo and behold, they actually did sound pretty good. But my biggest gripe with them is that they are incredibly sensitive to being inserted in a circuit the wrong way. You can, if you touch the legs together, even for a momentary second when it's inside the circuit, dead, gone. They are ridiculously sensitive to that sort of stuff, to static. I've seen a little, when I was actually inserting it into my germanium tester, and I saw a tiny little spark between 2 of the legs, and I went, I bet you that's gone. And lo and behold, another one that died. It's just, they're just so sensitive, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, if this was a pedal for me, I probably wouldn't worry too much because I could just use sockets and replace it. But if it's a pedal you're going to give to a friend or a pedal you're going to sell, I do not recommend using the GT308B. There might, and sorry, that was actually advertised, I'm pretty sure that was actually written in English as GT308V. Now I've heard that there's another GT308V, and that's the military spec version of this transistor, and that's a totally different animal. You'll get the right HFEs and you won't have these issues. So it's confusing. Working out which one's actually which is going to be a confusing job for you. Welcome to Germanium Transistors. It's just part of the fun. So that one I probably wouldn't recommend. You're going to see them on eBay. I know that I think it's Orpheus is still selling. Goldilux, I think it is. Goldilux is Gordelux. He sells them, and he's got heaps of them available. And I was wondering why there's just boxes and boxes of them. And I originally put an order in with him for 4 boxes because I just thought, you know, I'll just buy all these and then I'll be done. I'll be happy, and I can move on. But I thought I should probably get him to test them, and I'm glad I did because they aren't very good at all, and that's probably why they're still available. So far, all of these have been from Goldilux except for the GT309B. That was just some random person had those, but all the others have been from Goldilux. The next one is a IT322A or a GT322A, and as you'd know now that the A suffix, because it's on the end, it's a suffix, I'm pretty sure. The A suffix means that it's not the high gain version of this particular transistor. So I don't know, maybe there could be a GT322B and a GT322V out there. The A means low, the lower gain version, and as such they sit between 30 and 100 HFE, and these were actually pretty cheap. so I thought I'd just give them a go. I think I got 50 of them. I'm glad I didn't get any more though, because they don't sound very good. They actually sound pretty crap. I've tried them in a few circuits, and Gordelux actually said that these were 70s. These were from the 70s. The era was 70s, and I think that actually might not be correct, because so far I found that the older they are, usually the more leakage they have. Not in every case, but like often, when they get older, like the technology to make these germanium transistors wasn't as good, I suppose, and they sort of refined it as they went along. And these GT322As have a ridiculously low leakage, 15 microamps. Look at that. That's just this random one that I've picked out. 12 microamps. They're just low. 23 microamps, 11 microamps. They're just low, really low leakage. Like, compare that to, in case you're new to germanium transistors and you don't know what's a high leakage. Well, high leakage, I think they recommend not to go over 300 microamps. Again, that's almost like as I've harped on about the HFE. Don't worry too much about the HFE. I wouldn't worry too much about the leakage either. I've put transistors that have 2000 microamp leakage, and like I said in the last video, that they just sound a little bit different. They don't sound. It's not like you're going to put it in and it's just, oh my god, that's horrible. I personally don't think that. I think, it just sort of sounds, it sounded a bit more mushy is all I got from it. But that might be circuit dependent too. I mean, if you put it in a different circuit to what I was testing it with, you might get a different story. So anyway, these are very low leakage, and I just don't think that they're from the 70s. They also have 4 legs, and you might sort of be wondering, what the hell could that last leg be for? You can see there's a little tab where my finger is. And basically the one on this side is the emitter. So, like you look at the tab, and then, see if I can point at it in this camera, it's kind of like looking at a mirror. That leg there is the emitter. So you can see the tabs there, that's the emitter. And then the other one on the other side is actually connected to the case. You can connect that to your ground track to assist with shielding, or you can just cut it off. You don't even need it if you don't want to. I'm not even sure if it would make a difference if you did actually connect it to the ground track. I don't know, because I mean some of these other transistors have got as I showed in one of the other videos, one of them had the base connected to the ground, and if it's a noisy, like if it's a fuzz factory or something that's just meant to be pushing the limits, you're probably going to get noise whether it's connected to the ground or not. But I mean, it's there, so if you want to connect it to the ground, go for it. So I wouldn't recommend the GT322A, and I mean the gains, you got something in some usable gain ranges, but unfortunately they just don't sound very good. They just sound harsh, and I think I even tried them in a like just one slot of a tone bender, and you could still hear the harshness of it, and unfortunately they're pretty much useless. So you can see that it's not all wins. You end up buying a lot of transistors that are just no good. You just can't use them. I mean, what's the point in building a tone bender if you're going to stick one of these in it and it's going to sound crap? There's no point. So it's a gamble. Every time you buy them, sometimes you get good ones, sometimes you don't. It's good to do a lot of research before you actually buy them though, and see what other people think of them, because it might avoid you from getting some of the really no good ones, like the GT322A and the other one, the GT308 or whatever it was. Which one was it? GT308B. Oh, V. Sorry. I don't think they're any good either. So on to the next one. What have we got? Okay, now this one's actually the last lot that I got, and these are actually, I'm pretty sure these are NPN, they're NPN transistors, and this is another one that stated that they were going to be higher gain than what they actually were. They are, I think they're kind of similar to the to the GT308Vs gain-wise, they certainly look the same. They're you know, like a large sort of UFO shape, and you know, like just as an example of what sort of gains you get: 62.5, 49, 78, 53, 68, 46, 53, 106. That was a good one. 24.5, 60. And so they're all over the shop. You know, I mean, you're looking sort of between, again, the same, similar to the GT309Vs, I guess, but they're kind of, I don't know, looks so far like they're between 30 and 100. 65. I forgot to write that one on. 65 again. 32, 53. But because they're NPN, I don't think that was kind of a, I don't think it was kind of a loss as such, because NPNs are actually quite hard to get, and even though they're quite low gain, you know, they might still be usable for something. I don't know what they actually sound like either, so I didn't have the reliability issue of the 30, like the 308V with these ones, but I don't know what they sound like because I don't have any NPN fuzz circuits to test them in, so I can't actually comment whether they're any good or not. Pretty sure I got them relatively cheap too. I think they went under the radar. I'm just adding this last one actually to the video. I've thought of another one that I'd bought, another Russian. The MP21D is reportedly supposed to be between 60 and 200 HFE, but when you measure them, you're not going to get anywhere near that. In fact, you'll probably get closer to 35 to 60 HFE. It's probably another one that suffers from the collector current, but they actually sound very good, and I use them in a number of circuits for Q1 and Q2, and they have a very good frequency response. So that's another one to look out for Q1 and Q2 for circuits. So I'm just looking through what I've got left, and these are all sort of non-Russians. I've got a few Japanese, the 2SC and 2SBs, and I've got a few ACs, and there's actually something about the AC 125, something pretty important. There's a lot of those going around at the moment, and there's something important that I'm actually going to mention about those in the next video. Boo! Another video. It's dragging on. I've got to edit this, and I've only got a limited amount of time after work to do this, unfortunately. So I'll have to save it for tomorrow night. So anyway, that's a start. That's pretty much all my Russians. So the best ones probably of the lot were definitely the GT108Vs and the GT402Vs. What were they? Let me have another look. The GT402Vs. Yeah, they're definitely the best. There's a few sort of semi-successes amongst the other stuff. But I mean, as you can see too, you're probably starting to see they're the only two that actually got HFEs over 100. And I know I said in the other videos, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't just use something that's a bit lower gain, but you're gonna want to use kind of like, if you're not going to use a higher gain Q3, you're probably going to want to use you know, like the highest that you can get for Q3, you know, like 80, 90 maybe. And if you're getting a lot of transistors that are below, you know, that are 60 and below, you're going to have trouble. Well, you could probably still put 360s in and see what it sounds like. Probably still sound good. You might not get as much sustain out of it, but you'll still have a good low gain fuzz. And some of these fuzz pedals sound excellent in the lower registers. You know, like they sound like a really smooth, almost overdrive kind of sound, I found. So, you know, I mean, you could do that, but if you want a traditional fuzz, you're going to need to find some germanium transistors that have 100 plus. And like I've said, I've been harping on about, doesn't necessarily matter if it goes up to 200 HFE, just as long as you've got one over 100 that you can put in there, or, you know, okay, 90, 80, something probably above 80 you'd probably want to look at. You don't want to skimp too much on the HFE. So that's the Russians, and in the next one, yeah, I'll just be going over the ACs and the Japanese that I've got, yeah, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you found it informative, again, give me a thumbs up. It helps me out, and thanks for watching.